Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Adrian here with my cat Havoc, and I am here to talk about another one of my Commander decks. Yep, that's right. It's a Commander deck tech. Today we're going to be talking about Yisan, the Wanderer Bard. This guy, I kind of have the crazy Secret Lair one, but it's 3 mana. He's a 2/3, and it says you can pay 2 and a green, which is his casting cost as well. You tap him and you put a verse counter on him, and then you look through your library for a creature equal to the number of verse counters on him, and you just put it right onto the battlefield. So this guy's pretty strong. We are going to be talking about this deck in a little bit more of a casual setting. I will go over at the end of the video some of the cards that you could be running, but I'm not running because this is more of a casual deck. All right, so without any further ado, let's get right into it. We're going to go by CMC, and we're going to start with the 1-drops. First of all, we've got Wild Growth. This is really good because you can get it onto a forest, which obviously we run plenty of, and it will make it tap for an additional green. You also, unlike Utopia Sprawl, you can put this on a non-forest as well, but usually we're going to be putting that on a forest. Green Sun Zenith, it is technically a 1-drop, but we are very, very unlikely to cast it for 1. But we do sometimes, and it's going to search your deck for a green creature and put it right onto the battlefield, and then this is going to shuffle back in. So it's kind of like just having another Yisan type effect. Our whole deck is kind of built around that. We've got Delighted Halfling here. This card is really good. It's a 1-drop. It taps for any color for legendaries, and it makes them uncounterable because getting Yisan countered really, really stinks. Arbor Elf. This is a 1-mana dork. It untaps a forest, so we obviously run plenty of forests. And if that forest happens to have a Utopia Sprawl, which is the next card, Utopia Sprawl, you put it on a forest, it makes a tap for another mana, in this case green. If you have either of these on a land, well, you can untap that land and bada boom, bada bing, you've just doubled your mana. So you can go from putting that on a forest and then untapping it, and you can kind of like make yourself have 4 mana, which is really nice. Tyvar's Stand. Sometimes we will cast this for just 1. It gives a creature hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. We're almost always going to be targeting our Yisan because people will try and get rid of it. Next up, we have another mana dork. This is Elvish Mystic. I happen to have the cool Hatsune Miku, which also I have a poster of over there, if you can see that. But anyway, I have the Secret Lair Hatsune Miku version. But yep, it's just a 1-mana guy. It taps for green. If you don't have Elvish Mystic, you can run Llanowar Elves or whatever. I kind of think they're interchangeable. Or you can run both. The Ozolith, this card is really cool. A lot of people run this in 1/1 counter decks, but if you see it, it actually doesn't say it has to be 1/1 counters. So basically what it's going to happen is if a creature leaves the battlefield, dies, exile, whatever, if it has counters on it, you put those types of counters here, and then on the beginning of your turn, you can redistribute those counters, at the beginning of combat on your turn. So let's say our Yisan has like 3 verse counters on it, and then they get rid of it. Well, you put those on here, and then when you recast your Yisan, put the verse counters back onto it, so you don't have to start from scratch with Yisan. It's pretty strong. Next up, we have Spore Frog. I have the League of Legends variant of it. But Spore Frog is nice because it's a really good creature just to get for 1 mana with Yisan, and people don't really expect it. A lot of games in Commander are won with like a Craterhoof Behemoth or whatever, or an Insurrection, but this is going to make sure that that doesn't happen, and you're going to be pretty happy about that when you get to get somebody with it. Next up, speaking of really good cards to get for 1 mana, this card is great, Sylvan Safekeeper. It's actually an invitational card, so this is somebody who won a Magic World Championship, I think. But anyway, you're going to be able to sack a land, which you'll be happy to do to make sure that your Yisan doesn't die. Oftentimes, I will grab this with my first Yisan activation just to make sure Yisan is good to go. Veil of Summer, this is not necessary, but if you run with a lot of blue and black decks, it's really good. It makes it so your stuff can't be targeted or countered by blue and black stuff. And it also gives you impermanence you control hexproof from blue and black until end of turn. So this is great. And on top of all that, you also get to draw a card most of the time when you cast it. Next up, to finish out the 1-drops, we've got Noxious Revival. I have the cool Secret Lair of this too. You can play it for 1, or you can just pay 2 life and not even have to pay any mana. And you're going to put a card from a graveyard on top of its owner's library. You can use this to fizzle reanimation. You can use it to put your own good cards back on top of your deck. It's just a really strong, versatile card. Not necessary, but it is really nice just because we're in mono green and we don't have that much interaction. But I kind of count that as interaction. All right, next up, 2 drops. We've got Lightning Greaves. I run Lightning Greaves, and I do not run Swiftfoot Boots. There's a reason for that, which we'll get to later on in the 2 drops. But I'd like to minimize the number of artifacts I have. So we just run Lightning Greaves. We also run Sakura Tribe Elder. I have the cool promo of this. I think I got it at an in-store championship or something. But anyway, you know what it does. You sack it. You go get a land. It's just a 1/1. It's good. You can just kind of throw it out there and get rid of it. Really easily Rampant Growth style card. Gala Greeters. This is the buy box promo. Whenever another creature enters, you get to pick one of these things that hasn't been picked yet that turn. You can put a 1/1 counter on it, gain 2 life, or more than likely you're going to be making that tapped treasure token most of the time. Next up, we got Once Upon a Time. This is a really sweet card. If it's the first spell you cast, you actually just get to play it for free. And then you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, you get a creature or land, you get to put it in your hand. So this card is really strong. It takes the place of a land. It's good because if you're casting it for free, it's amazing. And if you're only casting it for 2, it's actually not too bad at that rate either. Next up, we've got Sylvan Library. At the beginning of your draw step, you can draw 2 extra cards, and then you got to pay 4 life or put them back on top of your deck. 4 life for each card that you don't put back. This card's really good. Oftentimes, we will just pay 8 life to draw 2 cards with it and be pretty happy about that. Next up, in the cavalcade of cards that don't actually cost their mana cost, we got Finale of Devastation. It is technically 2 mana, but it's like Green Sun Zenith. You go and get a creature with X cost, but this one has the upside where if you pump 10 whole mana into the X, all your guys, including the one that you just got, get +X and haste until end of turn. So this is a really good way to finish the game out, and it's kind of just like an extra win condition for the deck, while also being a card that we would want to run due to the tutoring effect. Next up, we have Collector Oof, which is the reason why I don't want to run too many artifacts. That's why I only run, I think just the one Lightning Greaves, I think is the only activated ability artifact we actually run. But anyway, this is great because it hates on treasure tokens. I guess we do have some things that make treasures. But anyway, this is going to hate on treasure tokens. It's going to hate on other people's mana rocks. We are mono green, so we don't really need to run mana rocks. We have mana ramp that gets us lands. So this card is just really good, and it's a toolbox card, so you can find it with all of your tutors and your Yisan when it's really good. Don't sleep on this. It's really, really, really strong, and you'll be happy that you have it most of the time. Canker Bloom, this is a 2 mana. It's a 3/2, and you could sack it for 1 mana. And you can either destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or proliferate, and that means you can proliferate the counters here if you want to jump. You know, you get this on 2 and you want to skip 3 and just go right to 4, you can do that. It's just versatile. You know, we want to run at least a couple creatures that destroy target artifacts and enchantments. Just being able to proliferate is just kind of an added bonus on top of that. And I have the cool, foil with the little Phyrexian symbols, which I don't know if you can see those on camera. Oh, they're there. All right. Next up, we got Prosperous Innkeeper. Whenever it enters, we get a treasure, and whenever another creature enters, we gain 1 life. So this isn't super necessary for the deck, but it is nice just because it helps us jump up on mana. Next up, we have Destiny Spinner. This makes it so creatures and enchantments we control can't be countered. We don't have that many enchantments, but it's nice that our creatures can't be countered. And then you can pay 4 mana to turn some of your lands into creatures, and they stay that way for a while. It's also a 2/3. So this is just a good card because it makes it so our guys can't be countered as easily or at all. Rampant Growth, that's just every green deck runs this. You go get a basic land. It's going to be a forest. You're going to put it into play. Scrib Ranger, this is a goofy one. It's got flash. It's got protection from blue for some reason. It has flying. But you can return a forest to its owner's hand, your forest to its owner's hand, to untap a creature. You only get to do it once a turn. But it is really nice to be able to untap our Yisan and activate it twice in 1 turn. That can help us get to our big stuff a lot faster. 3 visits, you're going to go get a forest, and you're going to put it into play. It's like Rampant Growth, but the land comes in untapped. We have a lot of 2-drops, so continuing on, we got Scavenging Ooze. I love this Secret Lair art from Wizard of Barg. It's great. You know what this card does. You pay 1 mana, exile a card from a graveyard. You really want to make sure, because green doesn't really have a lot of ways to destroy creatures. So you want to maximize what is green good at. Well, it can hit on the graveyard pretty well, and it can destroy artifacts and enchantments. So obviously we're going to run Scavenging Ooze to hit on the graveyard a little bit. Invasion of Ikoria. This is a 2-cost kind of siege. It basically does what Finale of Devastation does, but you can't get humans with it for some reason. So it's via non-humans. But most of the cards in our deck are non-humans. And it also has this thing where you can give it to somebody and then do 6 damage to it and get this big-ass dinosaur. But you're not usually going to be doing that. Next up, we're running green, and we run a lot of creatures. So obviously we're going to run Heroic Intervention to protect all of our nice stuff. Onto the 3-drops, we have Endurance. I have this cool special guest version of it. It's got Flash, it's got Reach, it's a 3/4, it's 3 mana. When it enters, target player puts all the cards from their graveyard on the bottom of their library in a random order. Do not shuffle the cards into your deck. That is not what you do. I see people do that all the time. And we can evoke it, which means we can play it for free if we want to exile a green card from our hand. So this just gives us like a free spell sometimes if we really need to use it so that we don't die to like an Underworld Breach or something like that. But a lot of times we're just going to get it for 3 because it's a really nice body. Manglehorn is our next card. This card is amazing. When it enters, you get to destroy an artifact, and all of your opponent's artifacts enter the battlefield tapped. So it's really going to hate on treasure tokens and mana rocks and artifact creature blockers and everything like that. This card's great. Definitely want to run that. Archdruid's Charm is our next card. This card costs 3 green, but that's okay because all of our lands pretty much tap for green. It does a whole lot of stuff. You can tutor a land or a creature or put counters on things and have them fight and exile target artifact or enchantment, which is really nice because it exiles the 1 ring. So that's pretty important. Augur of Autumn. You can look at the top of your deck at any time and play lands. And if you have Coven, which means you have 3 or more creatures with different power, like, you know, so this is 2 if you have 1 and a 3 or any combination of other numbers, you can cast creatures off the top of your deck. So obviously that's pretty good. We run a lot of lands and we run a lot of creatures. Next up, we have Chord of Calling. This is a great card. You're going to search your deck for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it right on the battlefield. We run a lot of ways to do that, obviously. But this one's special because it has Convoke, which means that we can, you know, tap our creatures to cast it. And a lot of times, we can just cast it for free. Evolution Sage. Whenever a land enters, you're going to proliferate. You're almost always going to be proliferating the counters from Yisan. So, you know, you're going to be jumping up numbers with that instead of having to activate them over and over again, which is really good. It helps us get to the late game much faster. Crows and Grip. I have a foil one of these, which is pretty sweet. It's got Split Second. You probably know what it does. It just destroys an artifact or enchantment, but the fact that it has Split Second makes it really good. If you're running green, you should probably be running that. Flare of Cultivation. I actually run this instead of Cultivate because you can sacrifice a non-token green creature and you're going to be getting a 2 basic land cards. Actually, you know what? In this deck, I think I run Cultivate. But anyway, I run this instead of Kodama's Reach. It basically does what they do. You're going to get 2 basic forests. You're going to put them into your hand, and one of them's going to go onto the battlefield. Yeah, I mean, this is basically everybody runs Kodama's Reach and Cultivate, but I think you can cut one of them for this. And I just happen to have a cool Cultivate, and so I run that instead of Kodama's Reach. But I don't think you need to run this and Cultivate and Kodama's Reach. I think that's overkill. Next up, we got Guardian Augmenter. This is a flash creature. It gives commanders +2/+2, your commander +2/+2, but it also gives your commander hexproof, which is very important. A lot of times we're going to be flashing this in response to removal. Obviously, we have a lot of ways to protect Yisan, but that's because our whole deck is based on Yisan, so it's very important. Eternal Witness. You probably know what this does, but I have the cool Secret Lair one. It enters, you're going to get a card back from your graveyard to your hand. Nice and simple. It's a great thing to get up with Yisan if you want to get back one of your awesome cards and play it again. Scurry Oak. This is a combo piece. That's the only reason why we run it, and I'll explain the combo when we get to the other card in that combo. Outcaster Trailblazer. When this enters, you're going to make 1 mana. It's going to be green, but it could be any color, but you're probably going to pick green. And then whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield, you're going to draw a card, and you can plot it, which means you can pay 3 and then play it later for free. So we have a lot of, small, dinky creatures, But we also have some pretty good big creatures, and this is oftentimes going to draw us cards, which is going to be really nice. Fierce Empath is the next card. This is a 3-mana 1/1, which kind of blows. But when it comes to the play, you're going to search your deck for a big creature, 6 mana cost or more, and put it in your hand. And we have quite a good number of those to select from, so that's a great card. And yep, I do run Cultivate. I have this cool Cultivate that I got as a Bring a Friend promo at the game store. If you don't go to the game store, you should go, because sometimes you get cool promos like this. You probably know what Cultivate does. It does the same thing as Flare of Cultivation, but you can't cast it for free. Next up, we got Tranquil Frillback. Kind of hard to tell, but it is a foil. When it enters, we can pay extra green. It kind of has like Kicker, sort of, where you can pay green when it enters, and you can do this up to 3 times. Destroy an artifact, get rid of a graveyard, or gain 4 life. Just a really nice all-around toolbox, and keep in mind that it just has to enter the battlefield. So if you tutor it up with any of our tutor things, you can pay that green when it enters, which is pretty cool. Speaking of things entering, I got a Reclamation Sage here. When it enters, you're going to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and that's just a good card to have in your green deck. Next up, we got Beast Within. I got the cool retro frame here. Destroys any permanent, including problematic lands, and then they're going to get a 3/3 Beast token. Because we're running mono green, we don't have a ton of ways to get rid of things. So just being, or like, you know, we don't have like Doomblade to destroy a creature. So a lot of times that's what we're going to be using to do that. Wood Elves, I also got this as a promo, an in-store promo. When it enters, you're going to search your deck for a forest and put it into play. It's a 3-mana 1/1, but it is nice because you can use it to ramp, and you can find it with all of your various things if you need to. We're going to go to 4 drops now. Beast Whisperer, another in-store promo. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you're going to draw a card. We have a ton of creature spells, so we're going to be drawing a lot of cards if we get to keep that card around for any amount of time. Next up, we got Tamir Sabertooth. You can pay 2 mana and return a creature to its owner's hand of yours. You turn another, I don't know why I keep saying it that way, but you can return one of your creatures to its owner's hand, and if you do, it gains indestructible. This is good for recasting all of our Enter the Battlefield creatures, which we run plenty of. So this is just a good card, and it's kind of beefy. You know, it's a 4/3, and it can survive removal by doing that. We also have the Green Force. I try not to run too many free spells in my Commander casual play group, but we do allow for some of them. This one's great because you can exile a green card instead of having to pay for it, and then you can destroy 2 artifacts and enchantments. It does kind of put you at parity because you're using this card and then you're exiling a card from your hand to kill 2 things, but you're going to be pretty happy to do it for free most of the time. Next up, we got Arasta of the Endless Web. It's a 3/5. It's got reach. It's 4 mana. It's pretty good stats. But whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery, you're going to make a 1/2 spider token with reach. This, unfortunately, it doesn't say non-creature, which kind of blows. But you are going to get a lot of value out of it. And this is the cool bundle promo. So I think it's pretty good. If a better card in the 4-drop slot comes out, you could replace it. But I think this is pretty worthwhile. Next up, we got Yeva, Nature's Herald. I have the Secret Lair drop for this. It's a 4/4 for 4 with flash, and you can cast all your green cards, creature cards, as though they had flash. This is great because a lot of our removal, like Reclamation Sage, for example, is on creatures. So giving those creatures flash is really nice. All right, so this is Ivy Lane Denizen. It says whenever another green creature enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on something. That's pretty cool, right? Well, it actually just goes infinite with Scurry Oak. So you could just Google this to figure out how it works. But whenever one or more 1/1 counters go on the Scurry Oak, you're going to get a 1/1. Whenever you get a 1/1, you're going to put a 1/1 counter on something. So you're going to end up with like a million Squirrel tokens. And, you know, if you get to untap, you're going to be able to win. Or if you can do this at instant speed, you just do it at the end of somebody's turn and then you untap and win. So that's why we run that. If we didn't have Scurry Oak, we probably wouldn't run that, but because we do, we run it. Next up, we got Guardian Project. Whenever you play a green, or not green, but any type of creature that's not a token, you're going to get to draw a card. So that's pretty good. Next up, we got Birthing Pod. This is another way to kind of look through our deck for good, useful creatures at any given time. Obviously, this is not any good with Collector Oof in play, but it's so good that we still run it just because if we do get to play it, we're going to be pretty happy about that. Next up, this is the Strixhaven Mystical Archive Japanese edition, I think, so we can't just read it, but it's natural order. And what that means is that it's 4 mana, and you have to sacrifice any green creature in order to cast it. Now, that can be a token. And when we do that, we're going to get any green creature we want, and we're going to put it right into play. So that's pretty strong. We're usually going to be getting our Crater Hut Behemoth with that. All right, moving up to 5 drops. You know, we have a couple of them. We got Acidic Slime. This is also, I think it was in the same Secret Lair drop as that Scavenging Ooze, but it's a 5-drop. It's a, you know, it's only a 2/2, but it has Death Touch, so it doesn't really matter too much. And when it enters, you're going to destroy a target artifact, enchantment, or land. Some people in these mono green decks have been cutting back on this, but I don't think you want to do that in Yisan. I think it is pretty strong, especially with a lot of good lands in the format right now. I think you want to make sure that you have a way to deal with some lands. Next up, we got Silverback Elder. Whenever we cast a creature spell, we're going to get to do a couple of these things that we can pick from. We're either going to destroy an artifact or enchantment, or we're going to look at the cards on 5 cards and get a land onto the battlefield, or we're going to gain 4 life. He's also a 5/7, which is just really, really big. So obviously we have a lot of creatures, so we're going to get to do that a lot. Next up, probably the best card in the deck is Seaborn Muse. It's going to untap all of our permanents on each other player's untap step. So how this works with Yisan is, you know, you pass, you go to your buddy here, you can use it again. You go to your buddy over there, you can use it again. Next person, use it again. So, you know, in one turn cycle, on our turn and on all of our opponent's turns, we're going to get to activate this dude like 4 times if we were playing in a 4-pod. So that's just, you know, one of the best things that we can do in our deck. You know, imagine you go from getting a 1-drop to a 2-drop, a 3-drop, a 4-drop, and then on your next cycle, you're getting a 5, 6, 7, 8. That's just incredibly strong. And people know that, which is why they'll pretty much always get rid of this little thing. But if you get to untap with it, it's pretty insane. All right, up to 6 drops, we got Kogla, the Titan Ape. When he enters, we're going to fight a creature, so it's nice because we don't have a lot of creature removal. And when he attacks, we're going to destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. And we can pay 2 mana to return a human, and it's going to gain indestructible. So in that regard, it's kind of like Temur Sabertooth. We don't have a ton of humans, as I mentioned before, but we do have Eternal Witness and, well, maybe just Eternal Witness. Oh, and Outcaster Trailblazer. Yeah, so, oh, and the Augur. Yeah, that one's not great. But, oh, Destiny Spinner. Yeah, so there's a few humans. Obviously, returning Eternal Witness is probably the most powerful thing you can do with that, but just the other parts of it are why we really want to run it. Next up, we have Bane of Progress. When this thing enters, you're going to blow up all the artifacts and all the enchantments, including yours, but we don't run that many. And you're going to get a 1/1 counter on this thing for each permanent that you destroy. So usually this is going to be a nice way to board wipe all those, you know, clue tokens, food tokens, whatever. Mine is damaged, unfortunately, but, you know, you take what you can get sometimes. Next up, we have Hornet Queen. I personally hate flying bugs, so, you know, I don't even really want to talk about this thing, but it's so good, we got to run it. 7 mana, 2/2 flying, Death Touch. When it enters, we're going to get 4 1/1 flying tokens with Death Touch. That's crazy. Basically, if you play this, until somebody wipes the board, nobody's ever going to attack you, so it's pretty good. Also, in the 7 drops, we have Titan of Industry. I got this cool showcase version of it. It's a huge boy, 7/7 reach, trample. And when it enters, you get to pick 2 of these 4 things. You're either going to blow up an artifact or an enchantment. You're going to have target player gain 5 life, usually yourself. You're going to make a 4/4 Rhino, or you're going to put a shield counter on a creature you control. So there's pretty much no way you can go wrong here. You're either getting a 7/7 and a 4/4 and gaining 5, or, you know, 7/7, 4/4 blowing up an artifact, or 7/7 and a 4/4 and putting a shield counter on something. Really, any combination of those is going to be pretty good. Next up, second to last, we have Meteor Golem. This is a 7 mana creature. He's only a 3/3, but when it enters, we're going to destroy any non-land permanent an opponent controls. So that's just another kind of form of removal that we have in our deck. We also have Regal Force. When it enters, it's going to draw a card for each green creature we control. You could probably see why that would be pretty dang good. We run a lot of creatures, and it's going to draw us a ton of cards. All right, next up we have Avenger of Zendikar. You probably know what this one does, and it's best friends with the next card that we're going to talk about. But when it enters, you get a bunch of 0/1s for each land you control, and then whenever you play a land, you're going to put a 1/1 counter on all your plants. So it's just going to gum up the board big time, which is really good if you have Craterhoof Behemoth, which of course we do. You know what this one does. It comes down, it makes all your creatures huge, and then you win the game usually. So with Yisan, usually what you want to do is get a 1 and a 2 drop that kind of ramp you or help protect your Yisan, and then you go for removal and value in 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then you get Avenger of Zendikar on 7, or Hornet Queen, and Craterhoof on 8. So next we're going to talk about the lands. Now I'm going to talk about all the lands that actually do something interesting first, and then we're going to talk about, we're just going to breeze past the fact that we have a bajillion forests in the deck. So I count these MDFC cards as lands, and we run quite a few of them. So it's a way to get extra effects into our deck without having to cut any of our enter the battlefield creatures. So Bridgeworks Battle gives one of your creatures +2/+2, and then it's going to fight. That's just a good way to get some removal in the deck. Speaking of which, County Ambush is an instant speed, and it just fights something. Dark creature fights another creature that you don't control. So those are a couple good ways to get removal into the deck on the fly. Next up, we got Tangleflorahedron. This is actually a creature. You're probably not usually going to get it with Yisan, but you can technically. And it just taps for green, and it's a land some of the time as well. Ballot Guide Recovery. If you're running green, you should probably be running this. It's kind of like an E-Whip, but you don't get a creature out of it. And it is a land, so you can count it as a land. And in terms of another 6-drop creature, Disciple of Freyalise is pretty cool. When it enters, you can sacrifice another creature and gain X life and draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. We are a little bit light on 6 drops, so I think we only have like 2 or 3. So having this in our land spot is pretty nice because it is a creature that we can get to refill our hand. That's all the MDFCs. We run a ton of them. We run 5 of them, but they are all pretty much worth it. Next up, we run Dryad Arbor. It's just a forest creature. It costs 0, obviously, because it's a land, but probably the most powerful thing you can do with this is get it with your Green Sun Zenith on turn 1. We also run Yavi Maya. We don't really need it, but it is nice. Like, if you have to play one of these early on, you can turn it into a forest so that you can put Utopia Sprawls and untap them with Arbor Elves and stuff like that. You definitely don't need this in the deck if you don't already have one, but I already had one, so why not? Next, we have one of the only lands in our deck that doesn't technically tap for green, but yeah, it really does. It's Nykthos. We're going to pay 2 mana and pick green, and then add a bunch of green mana to our mana pool for our Devotion, which, unless we've been board wiped, is probably going to be a lot. And the last effect land we have is Beseju, who endures. This is a good card, obviously. It's another way to blow up an artifact, enchantment, or a non-basic land, and it's basically a land, so you can get away with running it in your land slot. And then we have a butt ton, and I mean a metric butt ton of just basic forests. I think there's probably like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 of those bad boys. So a 24 plus 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. We run 33 lands if you want to count the MDFCs as lands. I think that's more than enough just because we have a ton of ramp in this deck. I think you'll be fine with that. All right. And in terms of cards that you could be running that I'm not running, I don't run the fast mana in this deck. You could run Jeweled Lotus. You could run Soul Ring. You could run Chrome Mox, whatever, any types of those things. But I don't because I'm running a casual list. Going along with that, I'm actually going to show my face on camera. Whoa, there I am. To grab a pretty cool card that you probably would want in this deck. but I'm not running it in my more casual play group. And it is, of course, the one and only Gaia's Cradle. I have this cool World Champions version, which is not cheap anymore, but used to be. But anyway, you know what this does. It taps for a bajillion green, and it taps green for each creature you control. If you also wanted to run Ancient Tomb, you could run that too, but not in this list because this is the more casual list. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. I'm going to keep making these as long as I feel like making them. Okay, bye-bye.